The August sun of 1875 hung over Salt River Valley like a punishment from God, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and dance, the kind that killed men who weren't careful. James Harrow sat on the porch of his cedar cabin, a Winchester rifle across his knees, 44 caliber, 20 rounds in the tube magazine, lever action smooth as butter after 15 years of use. He'd killed 17 men with this rifle, Confederate soldiers during the war, outlaws after. He remembered every single face. At 45 years old, James had the kind of face that made strangers cross the street. A scar ran from his left eye to his jaw. A rebel bayonet at Chickamauga had given him that souvenir back in '63. His hands were thick with calluses from rope and reins, his shoulders broad from breaking wild horses. He'd been a Union cavalry scout, a trail boss, a ranch foreman. Now he was nothing, just a man hiding from his past in a cabin at the end of nowhere. "Mr. James!" The voice belonged to Daniel, the 14-year-old orphan he'd taken in 2 years back. The boy stood at the corner of the cabin, eyes fixed on the northern ridge. "Riders coming, 3 of them, armed." James was already moving. He grabbed the shotgun from its rack beside the door, a Remington double-barrel, 12-gauge, loaded with buckshot that could cut a man in half at 20 feet. He tossed it to the boy. "Root cellar, now! Don't come out until I say." "But I can help." "Now!" The boy ran. Good. He was learning to follow orders when it mattered. James stepped onto the porch. Winchester leveled, watching the dust cloud grow larger on the northern ridge. 3 riders, maybe 4, moving at an easy pace. Confident, unhurried. He'd been waiting for this day, ever since Red Cliff Canyon, ever since the night he'd helped slaughter 47 Apache men, women, and children. Based on intelligence reports that turned out to be lies, the debt of blood always came due. He just didn't know who was collecting, but it wasn't 3 riders who crested the hill first. It was one figure, alone, stumbling down the slope with the desperate gait of someone who had walked too far on too little. A woman, Apache by the deerskin dress and the long black hair that hung past her shoulders. Young, maybe 20 years old, bleeding from a wound on her shoulder. She reached his fence and grabbed the top rail with both hands. Her knuckles went white. Her legs trembled. Blood soaked through the leather of her dress, dark and spreading. But her eyes. Her eyes were dark as obsidian and just as sharp. They locked onto James with a recognition that made his blood run cold. "James Harrow," she said. Her voice cracked like dried leather, but the words carried straight through him. "You saved my life. Now I need you to do it again." The rifle nearly slipped from his hands. He remembered. The screaming, the fire, the smell of burning flesh and gunpowder mixing in the desert air. A 15-year-old girl, soot-covered and terrified, clutching his neck as he carried her through the flames. He'd left her at the forest edge because he had to go back, had to try to save more. When he returned an hour later, she was gone. He'd spent half a decade believing she was dead. Another ghost to add to the 47 others that haunted his sleep. But she wasn't dead. She was standing right in front of him. "Kaya," he said. The name came back from somewhere deep, a name she'd whispered once before losing consciousness in his arms. "They're coming," she said. 3 men. "They've been hunting me for 18 days. If they take me back, I'm dead." "Back where?" "The mining camp, in the Superstition Mountains." Her jaw tightened. "Where I've been a slave since that night." The dust cloud was closer now, half a mile. James could make out the shapes through the heat shimmer. 3 riders, moving at an easy trot, not rushing. Why would they rush? They had their prey cornered. "Get inside," James said. "Can you shoot?" "I can learn fast." He pulled his Colt revolver from his holster. 6 rounds in the cylinder, single action, accurate to 50 yards in steady hands. He pressed it into her palm, showed her how to cock the hammer, how to aim. Point at the center of the chest. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. And if I miss, don't. She went inside. James walked to the fence line and waited. The lead rider stopped 50 feet away. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a black suit that cost more than most men made in a year. A politician's suit, a businessman's suit, the suit of a man who paid others to do his killing. "Mr. Harrow," the man called out. His voice was smooth as snake oil. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to anyone but me." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "The Apache girl, she's bound to my service by legal contract. I have the papers right here." He pulled a folded document from his jacket. James didn't move. "Papers don't mean much when the signature's from a dead man." The smile flickered. Sheriff Graham was very much alive when he signed. Sheriff Graham died in '72, 3 years before your contract date. James let that sink in. "Want to try again?" Behind the silver-haired man, 2 other riders shifted in their saddles. One was tall and thin, with a fast draw rig on his hip. The other was broad and scarred, a shotgun resting across his lap. Professional guns, expensive ones. The silver-haired man's mask slipped, just a fraction. "You're making a mistake, Harrow. A very expensive mistake. I've made plenty of those. One more won't matter. Last chance. Give me the girl, and we ride away. Nobody has to die today." James raised the Winchester. The front sight settled on the silver-haired man's chest. "Nobody's dying today except the men who don't leave my property in the next 10 seconds. You're 1 man against 3. I've had worse odds." For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind stirred dust between them. A hawk circled overhead. Then the silver-haired man turned his horse. "This isn't over, Harrow. Not by a long shot." They rode away, 3 figures growing smaller against the red rocks. James watched them until they disappeared over the ridge. They would be back. Men like that always came back. They regrouped. They planned. They came at you when you weren't ready. He had until nightfall to prepare. "Kaya," he called through the door. "We need to talk, and you need to tell me everything." Inside the cabin, Kaya sat at the table while James cleaned and stitched her wound. She didn't flinch, didn't make a sound. Just watched him work with those dark, unreadable eyes. "The man in the black suit," James said. "Who is he?" "Marcus Sterling, businessman, politician, council member in Prescott." Her voice was flat, the voice of someone who had learned that emotion was a luxury. "He owns 3 mines, 2 banks, and half the territorial government." She told him the rest. After James left her in the forest that night, she'd run for 2 weeks, living on roots and stream water. Then Sterling's men found her. They took her to a mining camp in the Superstition Mountains, the same mountains where the gold from Red Cliff Canyon had been hidden. "How many others?" James asked. 12 when I arrived, 8 now." Her jaw tightened. "The others died. Exhaustion. Beatings. One girl tried to escape. Sterling shot her himself. Made us watch." James said nothing. His hands kept working, thread through flesh, clean, efficient, the kind of work a man learned in field hospitals during the war. "I tried to escape 4 times, Kaya continued. Each time they caught me. Each time the punishment was worse. 3 weeks ago, Sterling got drunk, forgot to lock the barracks door. I knocked out the guard with a rock and stole a horse." "There's something else," she said. "Something you need to know." James looked up. Sterling didn't just want the gold. The massacre wasn't about money. What was it about? "Revenge. Against you." The words hit like a bullet to the chest. "Fort Apache," Kaya continued. Spring of 1870. Sterling approached you about selling army supplies on the black market. You refused. Reported him to your captain. The memory surfaced slowly. A businessman with a scheme. James had mentioned it to Captain Morrison the next day. Thought nothing more of it. Your report started an investigation. Sterling lost a contract worth $12,000. Lost everything. Kaya's voice was steady. He swore he would destroy you, make you feel what he felt. The massacre, James said slowly. He fed the army false intelligence. Used my scouting reports to make it look credible. You were his weapon. He aimed you at my people and pulled the trigger. Before James could respond, a sound from outside cut through his thoughts. Hoof beats, fast, coming from the east. He grabbed the Winchester and moved to the door. A single rider was coming hard across the valley floor. Apache, young, male, wounded badly, blood soaking through his shirt, but still in the saddle. Kaya appeared beside James, her breath caught. Neshoba? My brother. The rider's horse collapsed 50 yards from the cabin. Neshoba threw himself clear, rolled across the hard ground, came up on one knee with his rifle still ready. Kaya, his voice was weak but clear. I found you. You're hurt. Sterling's men, 6 of them. They'll be here by sundown. Inside, James dug the bullets out of Neshoba's shoulder and side. The wounds were bad. He'd lost too much blood, but he wasn't done yet. You're Harrow, Neshoba said. The soldier who saved my sister. I am. Then listen, because what I'm about to tell you changes everything. Neshoba had spent the last years searching for Kaya. 3 months ago, he'd infiltrated Sterling's mining camp, worked there as a laborer, watched, listened, learned. Sterling didn't just arrange the massacre, Neshoba said. His breathing was getting worse. He killed your family. James went still. Your wife, Catherine. After you came back from Red Cliff, she started investigating. Found letters between Sterling and Colonel Creed. Evidence of conspiracy. She was going to take it to the federal marshal. She never told me. She wanted proof first. Neshoba coughed. Blood flecked his lips. Sterling found out. Paid a man named Jessup to sabotage your wagon. The accident on the mountain pass. It wasn't an accident. The world went very quiet. James remembered that day, coming home to find the sheriff waiting. The wagon had gone off the road, fallen 100 feet into the canyon. Catherine, Grace, his wife of 12 years, his daughter of 7. He'd buried them 3 days later. My daughter was 7 years old, James said. Collateral damage. Neshoba's jaw tightened. Sterling's word. I heard him say it myself. James turned away, walked to the wall, put his hand flat against the rough cedar logs and tried to remember how to breathe. Catherine hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered because she was trying to prove his innocence, because she loved him. Where's your proof? James asked without turning around. In my saddlebags, letters, financial records, a map of the gold deposit with Sterling's signature, dated before the massacre. Neshoba's breath rattled. And my father's bloody handprint. He found the map, tried to warn our people, got shot for it, pressed his hand against the paper before he died. James turned back. His eyes were dry. His voice was calm. Something had shifted inside him. Where's Sterling now? Prescott. He has the judge in his pocket. The sheriff too. Then we go over their heads. The thunder of hooves interrupted them. James moved to the window. 6 riders on the northern ridge. The sun was dropping toward the horizon. They're here, he said. Get ready. The battle lasted until full dark. James positioned Daniel in the loft with the shotgun. Back up only. Kaya took the back window with the Colt. Neshoba, despite his wounds, took the side window. You should rest, James said. I'll rest when they're dead. The first shot came as the sun touched the ridge. A bullet punched through the window frame. James returned fire. The Winchester barked twice. One rider went down. Another's horse collapsed. For 30 minutes, lead flew in both directions. James moved from window to window, conserving ammunition, making every shot count. When it was over, 3 men lay dead in the yard. 2 had fled into the darkness. Cole Brennan was pinned behind the water trough, his gun arm shattered. James walked out into the night. "Where's Sterling?" Cole spat blood. "Go to hell." "You first." James raised the rifle. "Wait." Cole's voice cracked. "Prescott. He's waiting in Prescott. Has everyone bought?" James lowered the rifle. "You're going to testify. Everything you know about Sterling, the massacre, the mining camp. You do that, maybe you live to see a prison cell instead of a grave. And if I refuse, then I leave you here, let you bleed out slow." Cole's eyes flickered. Self-preservation won. "Fine, I'll talk." James bound Cole's wounds and tied him to the fence post. He'd keep until morning. Inside, Kaya knelt beside her brother. Neshoba's breathing had gone shallow. His eyes were losing focus. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have found you sooner." "You found me." Kaya held his hand. "That's what matters." Neshoba's eyes found James. "Make him pay. In court. In front of everyone. Make them all see what he is." "I will." Neshoba smiled, small and tired. Then his eyes closed. His chest rose once more, and stopped. Kaya made a sound that carried all the grief of a woman who had lost everything. James gave her space. When dawn came, they buried Neshoba on the hill overlooking the valley. Kaya sang something in Apache, a death song. Then she stood and looked at James with eyes that had gone hard. "Now we finish this." "Yes, now we finish this." The ride to Prescott took 3 days. Cole Brennan rode with his hands bound, his wounded arm in a sling. A prisoner, a witness, insurance. Daniel stayed behind to guard the cabin. "You come back," the boy said as James mounted his horse. "I will." "Promise?" James looked at the boy. Saw something of himself at that age. Stubborn, scared, trying not to show either. "I promise." They reached Prescott on a Tuesday afternoon. The territorial capital was chaos. Miners and merchants crowding streets that smelled of horse manure and ambition. James's first stop was the telegraph office. 3 wires, one to the federal marshal in Phoenix, one to the territorial governor, one to Colonel Harrison, a man he'd served with during the war, who now sat on the War Department's investigative board. His second stop was the sheriff's office. He handed Cole Brennan over with instructions to keep him isolated. No visitors, no messages. "This man has evidence in a federal case," James told the deputy. "Anything happens to him, you answer to the marshal." His third stop found him. "James Harrow?" The voice came from a man in his early 30s, lean, wearing a suit that had seen hard travel. He'd been waiting outside the telegraph office. "Who's asking?" "Thomas Whitfield, attorney at law. Denver." The man fell into step beside James. "I've been tracking Sterling for 2 years. Followed his men here from Phoenix. He killed my sister in '73. Made it look like a robbery." "And you want revenge?" "I want justice. There's a difference." Whitfield's jaw tightened. "I have documents, testimony from former employees, records of bribes. Combined with whatever you have, we can bury him." James studied the lawyer. Young, educated. The kind of man who believed the law meant something. "You know how to handle a gun?" "I know how to handle a courtroom. Right now, that's more dangerous." 3 days later, everything was in place. The federal marshal arrived from Phoenix with 4 deputies. The territorial governor, pressured by the War Department, had ordered a full investigation. Judge Morrison was removed from the bench. Sheriff Dalton was placed under arrest. Cole Brennan testified for 6 hours. Names, dates, payments. everything. Sterling knew they were coming. He'd barricaded himself in his office above the Prescott Mining Company. 4 armed guards outside. James didn't bother with subtlety. He walked up the main street at high noon, Winchester in his hands, Kaya on his left, 2 federal deputies behind. The guards saw them coming, 4 men with rifles. "Federal warrant for Marcus Sterling," James called out. "Murder, conspiracy, fraud, step aside." The first guard raised his weapon. James was faster. The Winchester barked. The bullet took the man through the thigh. He went down. The second guard fired wild. James put a round through his shoulder. The third raised his hands. The fourth ran. "Sterling!" James's voice carried across the street. "Come out, it's over." A window opened on the second floor. Sterling appeared, a revolver in his hand. His silver hair was disheveled. His expensive suit was wrinkled. For the first time, he looked afraid. "Over?" Sterling's voice cracked. "I own this town. You own nothing." James raised the federal warrant. "Signed by Marshal Earp. Murder, conspiracy, kidnapping. You're done." "You think paper matters?" "I have friends. Your friends are in custody. Morrison, Dalton, Creed. All of them." James's voice was calm, certain. "It's over, Sterling. The only question is whether you hang or rot in prison." Sterling's face twisted, the mask finally gone. "You," he snarled. "You did this. I had everything. Then you ruined me over nothing. You killed 47 people. You killed my wife, my daughter, for money, for pride. I killed them because you needed to suffer." Sterling's gun came up. "And you still haven't learned." James was faster. The Winchester roared. Sterling's revolver flew from his shattered wrist. He collapsed against the window frame, screaming. James walked toward the building, slow, steady. "That was for my wife, the woman you murdered because she asked too many questions." He chambered another round. "This one's for my daughter, Grace, 7 years old. Collateral damage, you called her." Sterling's eyes went wide. "Wait, I can give you names, money, anything. I don't want names. I don't want money." James raised the rifle. Sterling looked down the barrel and saw his death. "What do you want?" Sterling whispered. "Justice." The shot echoed across Prescott. Sterling's body fell backward, out of the window, and hit the street below. Silence, then whispers, then applause. James lowered the rifle. It was done. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Whitfield presented the evidence with surgical precision. Cole Brennan testified. Kaya testified. Former miners testified about the conditions in Sterling's camps, about the prisoners who died, about the bodies buried in unmarked graves. Morrison, Dalton, Creed, all convicted, all sentenced. The mining operation was shut down. The surviving prisoners were freed. The land in Red Cliff Canyon was returned to the Apache people. On the final day, James found Kaya standing outside the courthouse. "What now?" he asked. "My people are rebuilding the canyon. There's work to do." "You're going back." "Someone has to." She looked at him. "You could come. Help us build something new." James thought about it. The cabin, the silence, the boy waiting for him. "I've got Daniel to raise. He's got nobody else." Kaya nodded. She understood. "You're a good man, James Harrow. I'm a man who did what needed doing. That's all." She held out her hand. He shook it. Firm, brief. "If you're ever in Red Cliff Canyon, you'll have a place at our fire." "I'll remember that." She walked away. James watched until she turned the corner. Then he headed for the livery. Daniel was waiting. The boy had ridden into town that morning, against orders. "You should have stayed at the cabin," James said. "Couldn't. Thought you might need backup." James looked at the boy, 14 years old, stubborn as a mule, loyal as a hound. "Come on, let's go home." They rode out of Prescott as the sun began to set. The road stretched ahead, winding through red rocks and desert sage, pointing toward a cabin in a valley at the edge of nowhere. It wasn't much, but it was home. The debt was paid. The ghosts were quiet. And somewhere ahead there was a boy who needed a father, and a cabin that needed a man. That was enough.